Ned stood up on the rocks and turned to look at the ferry 1/2 mile out to sea. When she put in, the crew would carry the wooden box, now weighed down with sea chain and iron tackle, to the dock where, after a time, it would be opened and the deception discovered. Perhaps the island had already sent a message to shore, and Ned was already a wanted man. He shivered and unwound from his aching shoulders a large yellow oilskin bag that he had stolen from the captain's locker on board the ferry. In the locker he had also found clothing and a wallet containing 2,500 Danish kroner. He had no idea whether it was a fortune or barely enough for a small breakfast. 1/2 hour later he walked into a crowded cafe on the Aarhus road. He had not been surprised to discover that he was in Denmark. Babe had told him that the hospital island lay in the Kattegat, somewhere between the Swedish coast and northern Jutland. Ned marched straight to the counter and ordered a cup of coffee and a plate of eggs and bacon. He took a seat and looked around him. He had seen 5 large lorries parked outside and decided that his best course was boldness and speed. "Hey!" he called out above the noise of the jukebox. Everyone in the cafe looked up and stared at him. "Anybody here going south? I need to be in Germany by tonight. I'll go halves on the fuel." Most of the men in Ned's eyeline shrugged and looked back down at their plates. 1 or 2 shook their heads regretfully, but no one responded. "Damn," thought Ned. "What do I do now?" A voice behind him spoke up in broken Danish. "I have to be in Hamburg tonight. You are welcome to ride with me." "Fantastic!" cried Ned in German. "You've saved my life." "Oh, you're German," said the other. "Thank Christ for that. Danish is a nightmare." "I know," said Ned with a sympathetic smile. "Trying to speak it gives you a nosebleed. Let me buy you a cup of coffee. You don't mind waiting while I dive into a quick breakfast, do you?" "No problem," said the other, coming round to join Ned at his table and extending his hand. "Dieter, by the way." "Karl," said Ned. "Pleased to know you." "Ah, prachtvoll." He smiled up at the waitress as a plate was put in front of him. "And a cup of coffee for my friend here," he added in Danish. Someone had left a newspaper on the table, and Ned searched it for a currency table. With relief, he worked out that he was carrying over £200. Unless inflation had gone entirely insane over the last 20 years, he reckoned it should be enough to get him where he wanted to go. Ned rode up front with Dieter, who told him that he had picked up a consignment of paper pulp in Skagen, 50 miles north of the roadside cafe they were leaving, which was just outside the port of Aalborg. Ned calculated that they still had a drive of 150 miles south to the German border. The ferry would be putting in at the harbour in Aalborg now. It was all a question of whether or not Dr. Mallow had decided to alert the police. He would have discovered that there were papers missing from his filing cabinet, and Ned was confident that this would prevent him from contacting anyone in authority. Perhaps Mallow would call Oliver Delft. Probably he would not dare. In Mallow's position, Ned would fabricate a death certificate and try and forget that the troublesome Englishman had ever existed. Dieter was not a demanding conversationalist. His world appeared to revolve around his wife, Trude, and their children, of whom there were photographs displayed all around the cabin, and football, of which Ned knew little. What he did know was confined to what he had learned of the Scandinavian leagues from Paul. The doings of Trondheim held no interest for Dieter whatsoever. "Not much traffic," Ned remarked at one point. "April 16th, said Dieter. "It's a public holiday here. The Queen's birthday, so they tell me." "Ah, of course." They stopped for lunch outside Aarhus, and here Ned made his first mistake. They were sitting at a table, and Ned picked up a small object that Dieter had brought with him into the cafe. "What on earth is this?" he had asked, holding it in his hand and staring at it in bewilderment. "You're joking," Dieter smiled broadly. His eyes narrowed when he saw that Ned was completely serious. "Are you telling me that you don't know what this is?" Ned realised that he had blundered and tried to laugh it off. "What I mean to say is," he said, "I've not seen one like this before." "Not seen one like this? Look around you, man." Ned glanced at the other tables and saw at least 6 almost identical objects. "Well, it's the colour, really," he said with an attempt at heartiness. "Yours is red, the others are mostly black and grey." "Where have you been the last 10 years?" Dieter asked. "Where on God's earth is there a place without mobile phones?"